I can think of 2 times that God got angry at Moses. The second time is when God tells Moses to speak to a rock for it to have water flowing out of it, and Moses hits the rock instead. But the first time is when God is at the burning bush calling Moses to go back to Egypt and get his family, get the Israelites out of Egypt, out of slavery to the promised land. And Moses refuses for a long time, and then eventually brings up his slowness of speech, his stutter, some sort of like verbal disability, and says, send somebody else. And God gets angry. And that also reminds me of the time where Jesus is walking on water and Peter goes out to follow him, and then Peter looks at the waves and begins to sink, and Jesus pulls him up and says, you have little faith. And I think there's this theme of God maybe getting upset at us when we doubt ourselves, like doubt that God's call in our life, doubt our abilities, or think that our insecurities, our weaknesses, our disabilities, our history, our past somehow disqualifies us from being used to reveal God's goodness and God's kingdom. And I think God gets upset because there's this clear message, this clear pattern in Scripture of this really high view of humanity. We're called the images of God. We're called a little lower than the gods, or a little lower than the angels in the Psalms. We're called like stars in the heaven. And I think God might get upset at us when we say, no, we're not. No, we're not that good. Don't use us. Don't trust us. I've got a problem. I've got a disability. I've got a stutter. I've got a past. Whatever. God's like, no, don't talk about yourself that way. Why would you have so little faith? Peter, you were literally walking on water with Jesus. Why would you start to doubt? So I know it's maybe a little bit more on the inspirational side for me, when I'm usually so academic and intellectual, but I think there's something to pay attention to, that voice that says, no, you're not good enough. Don't think that voice is God. Remember that the word Satan, it means the accuser. And if you hear a voice that's constantly accusing you and belittling you and telling you you aren't good enough, I don't think our first instinct should be, oh, that's God's voice. I think God's voice, if it's upset at us, it's upset because we don't think highly enough of ourselves.